Most ATP Fantasy players are about to use their swing switch chip incorrectly. They're going to wait until the next draw drops, activate their chip, and then burn 8 switches in a panic to rebuild their team. But that's not what this chip is for. The swing switch chip is also for building team value, and the timing of when you activate it determines what you get. If you activate it now while the current tournament is still playing out, every match result becomes a trading opportunity. You arrive at the next deadline with credits you didn't have, players you couldn't afford to own, and a team that's built on the back of decisions that other players are now too late to make. So this video is the framework that I'm using to play my swing switch chip, and the rules I'll be applying every day throughout the rest of the swing to make sure that every trade is worth taking. So let's serve it up. Welcome back to another video. This is Josh from Expected Aces, your edge in ATP Fantasy. Now this is the first video in a new series aptly called The Edge, and for this video we're focusing on the swing switch because it's going to be a very popular week for everyone to play it. Rome is currently going on, but we're about to head into tournament week 5, which is the ATP 500 event in Hamburg and the ATP 250 event in Geneva. This feels like the right time to play the swing switch chip because a lot of the big players will not be in action. We know that Jannik Sinner and Novak Djokovic, for example, are not playing this event. I'm sure there'll also be a lot of high profile withdrawals as the tournament's near. So before we get into what's on screen, just a reminder that the swing switch chip grants you 8 free switches as opposed to your usual 2. But remember, you cannot exceed this limit. You get given 8 and that is the maximum you can make that week. Now on screen here I want to dive into a bit of the ATP Fantasy psychology. Reactive players react to information and proactive players compound and get ahead. So the swing switch chip window is where your edge lives in this game. And although many of you are planning on playing that chip this week, you may have not activated it already, and that is a mistake. So if we take the reactive player in mind here, they have the tournament week 4 deadline's been and gone, and they are now watching Rome play out, and that's all they're doing right now. They know they're going to play the swing switch chip for tournament week 5, but they're waiting for the draw to come out next Saturday. Then they'll have less than 24 hours to frantically scramble and make those 8 changes before the tournament week 5 deadline on Sunday, May 17th. That really isn't optimum planning at all. Even if they've been thinking about certain players they want and certain moves they want to make, they're still missing out on a core mechanic of the game, trading. So as a proactive player, the Rome deadline has been and gone, but now you're activating your swing switch chip already, and you're looking at starting to make some changes. So it's important to look at which players are going to rise and fall in price as we progress through the rounds in Rome, and from that you can then make a few switches to gain some team value. It's going to become most prevalent in the later rounds of a tournament when there are more likely to be bigger shifts in the ATP live rankings. There's a great opportunity for you to use some of those free switches to make some money because you do get 8 free switches and you do not need all 8 of those switches. You only need to field a team of 6 for tournament week 5. So even if none of your current team is playing in Hamburg or Geneva next week, that still means you've got 2 switches to make a couple of trades. So if we look at the proactive player, which is going to be you after watching this video, you can activate your swing switch chip now. And then over the next few days in Rome, you're going to start to plan making some switches. I'm going to be releasing short videos on socials every evening showing you who's going to rise and fall in price the next day so you can get ahead. And from that, you can start to plan your moves. So the proactive player will make a couple of switches early on, make a few more later in the tournament. And then when we do get the draw for tournament week 5 next Saturday, they then use their remaining 4 switches to build their tournament week 5 team. But it's not a mad scramble at the end at all. So just to re-emphasise here, the activation timing is the edge. The chip's value is not in the 8 free switches alone, it's when you start using them. Now obviously I have to be clear here that not all of your 8 switches are going to be used for trading. It's going to be somewhere in between. If you're like me, for example, I've got 2 players set to play in tournament week 5, so I know I need to reserve 4 free switches to build my tournament week 5 team, which leaves me then with another 4 to use for trading purposes. But in your case, you might have 4 or 5 players already set to play in tournament week 5, which then gives you a few more to use for trading. The numbers are a rough guide on screen here, but gives you a nice visual to see how you should be thinking about playing your chip. A framework to help you with planning ahead and building your team is what I'm calling the 6 out of 8 and the 4 out of 8 structure. Now it might sound a little bit convoluted, but I've tried to simplify it for you on screen. So essentially, when all is said and done and you have put together your final team for tournament week 5 using the swing switch chip, you want to have 4 of your 8 players being players that you're happy to have not just for tournament week 5 but also for Roland Garros and tournament week 6. So these players ideally have got good draws in tournament week 5 and you feel like they're pretty much draw proof for tournament week 6. You're confident that they'll get far no matter what the draw could be. Now, spots 5 and 6 on screen here are players you want for tournament week 5 only. So these are going to be players that when a draw has come out, they've got a nice draw, but you don't really think they're a long-term hold for Roland Garros, because these might be players that are patchy in form, or they are very much like draw-dependent picks. And then your final 2 spots for your alternates are players you're going to hold that are not playing in tournament week 5, but they are playing in tournament week 6. So these would be your higher value players where you know you really want them for Roland Garros no matter what, even though they're not playing in tournament week 5. Also, you don't have to follow this structure verbatim, but it's a nice framework to sort of have in your mind, being like, okay, I want at least 4 players who are playing both weeks who I'm happy to have no matter what. So what that could look like in practice, this is purely an example I've just put together here, but you've got your 4 premium players, your Zverev, Caboli, Ruud and Fonseca. They're all playing in either Hamburg or Geneva next week, and there's a pretty good chance that you'd also want these 4 players for Roland Garros as well. It might be a little bit draw dependent, but you know that on the grand scheme of things, they're all going to be seeded and they're all going to have quite high ceilings for the first Grand Slam in ATP Fantasy. Then in slots 5 and 6, you can see we've got Tabilo and Fucsovic here. They're both playing in Geneva. They're cheaper players. In this example, let's say these 2 have got really, really good draws there. So they're your 2 players just for tournament week 5. But you would not have these 2 players in your Roland Garros team. They'd either be moved to the alternates or you would switch them out. And then you can see at the bottom here, we've got the 2 alternates. In this example, we're holding through Jannik Sinner and Artur Fils. Jannik Sinner, you know you're going to want for Roland Garros no matter what. So even though he costs a lot of money, it makes sense to hold him on the bench. So you'd have to then bring him back in again for Roland Garros. And then Artur Fils is the other one I've put here. He's someone else, again, who's not playing, but you probably want to hold. Because unless he ends up being in Jannik Sinner's quarter, and maybe even playing in the last 16, like we've had that example play out in Rome, if he's in any other part of the draw, you're going to want him as an essential pick. So it's worth rolling the dice on him, because he's got a 3 out of 4 chance that he will avoid Jannik Sinner's section. It's good odds. But also it could be you decide to hold Fils and Hadar on the alternates who are not playing until week 5, or Sinner and Hadar, for example. That's up to you, but just an example here so you can see what it looks like in practice. So now we looked at the team structure you're looking to have, let's now take a look more deeply at the trading you can be doing while Rome is going on. And I put together a system here that I'm calling a trading floor, because I believe that every switch you make must net you at least plus 2 credits in profit. We know in points terms we should treat every switch as being worth 50 points, because that is the penalty you have to take for every additional switch. So we know switches are very valuable. You only get a maximum of 8 per week. Normally you've only got 2 free switches. So you should also treat these trading opportunities with care as well, and you want to net at least 2 credits. What that looks like in practice is there are 2 ways of building this value and achieving that goal. So option A is buy low and sell high. So you are selling a player who is about to fall in price and you're bringing in a player who's about to rise in price. This actually played out over the last couple of days, and I actually made these moves myself. So back on Wednesday on May 6th, Matteo Arnaldi was about to close out his match against Munar, about to win it. As he got match point, I then brought him in. I took out Matteo Berrettini. So after that match, Arnaldi rose from 1 to 2 credits. So that was immediately a +1 credit gain for me. And then on May 7th, Matteo Berrettini lost in round 1 to Alexei Popyrin, and as a result, he fell in price from 2 to 1 credit. So when all was said and done, I came out with +2 credits in profit. This is a slightly riskier strategy than option B, because Berrettini could have won that match and then wouldn't have fallen in price. Then I would have wound up with only a +1 credit. It was a gamble I took in the sense that, one, I thought he was going to lose that match anyway, but even if he didn't, I feel like there are other players below him in the rankings who are on that threshold of a top 100 who also could have got a win or two to bring him into the top 100 and push Berrettini down, because he was right on the fringes. If you want to play it safer, then it's option B, which is waiting until later in the tournament to buy premium players. This is a hypothetical example on screen. This might not play out like this, but let's say we know that Caboli and Medvedev could meet in the last 16. Given how the rankings might shake out, there's an opportunity that Medvedev could overtake Bublik, for example. So if he then beat Caboli in the quarterfinals, Medvedev could rise from 15 to 17 credits. So you buy him around match point sort of time, and then you get that nice +2 credit price rise. We've seen other examples of this already, where you've got, for example, Ben Shelton and Felix Auger-Aliassime. Ben Shelton win the round to overtake Felix in the rankings, and as a result it rises from 24 to 27 credits, so you then built a +3 credit price gain on that. So then by making that one switch, you've netted 3 credits in profit. Unless all the premium players exit early in Rome, there are going to be a few opportunities later on in the tournament where those bigger players are going to get a price rise, and that'll be your opportunity to buy one of those by selling one of your other premium assets. Now, it might be that you do need to sell Sinner in order to facilitate this, because if you're trying to do, let's say you're trying to catch a Ben Shelton price rise from 24 to 27 credits, well, in order to have that money, you're going to have to sell a Sinner or a Zverev to make that happen. But in that case, it could be a good idea to use them as a trading chip, because you are then going to gain at least +3 credits in team value to help you buy better players, not just for Tournament Week 5, but also for Roland Garros, where it really matters as well. So just to visualise that on screen for you, where in the tournament are the best trade opportunities. In the early rounds, it's going to fluctuate quite a bit. You may have seen in my tweets and Reddit posts that some players are rising in 1 credit on this day, and they're going back down again the next day because of where the bottom half and top half of the draw are playing. As we get to the round of 32 and round of 16, the ranking points on offer go up significantly. Again, this is where the buy low, sell high method comes in because you are going to be able to sell an asset you've got who might be falling and bringing in a player who's going to rise. And as we get to the quarterfinals and semi-finals where the ranking points start to double, we're talking 200, 400 points on offer, then we're going to see the bigger then we're going to see the bigger ranking increases. And then we're going to start to see the 2+ credit gains when you start buying players who are about to rise. One thing to be mindful of when you're doing your trading is what I've called the bracket cliff. These are players that are perched right on the edge of a price bracket that could then fall below it again. So the section I put on screen here where you can see it's world number 16 to 20 right the way down to 75 to 100. If you're buying players who are about to cross into number 74 in the world, number 49 in the world, number 36 in the world, they're in a very vulnerable position. It's very volatile. One day they could be in that spot, the next day they could fall below it again. I think the best illustration of that is what I've got on screen here on the right hand side, which is the current race for being in that top 30 bracket and then being in that top 25 bracket. So you'll see here that Rafael Nadal is very close to Karim Moutet to getting that price rise now. If Rafael Nadal won his 3rd round match and Moutet loses in his round 64 match, let's say, Nadal gets to number 30 in the world and gets that price rise. But then if people below him like Griekspoor, Nakashima and Humbert get on a run, Nadal could easily then fall back below that threshold again as well. And it's even tighter when it comes to the 26 to 30 and the 21 to 25 bracket. Tommy Paul's currently at 25 in the live rankings, but look how close Casper Ruud is to him. If Ruud wins, goes level on points with him. And Tommy Paul's not playing until tomorrow. And then Cerundolo is also very close behind, 15 ranking points behind. It's likely that these players on screen, between Tommy Paul right down to Jakub Menchik, are going to trade a lot over the next few days. So you really need to wait to see which one of those come through to the latter stages and then get safely into that bracket point. I will advise on each day if I think players are good trades or not based on how comfortably they're moving into that next bracket. So looking ahead to Tournament Week 5 and 6, should you hold a premium player as an alternate? My recommendation would be yes, and I'm going to do it. So I'm going to hold Sinner on my bench. The ideal scenario for me is that I hold Sinner and Fils as my 2 alternates. I'm probably going to need to build a little bit more team value to afford this, because I looked at it right now and I am 3 credits short of being able to have what I deem a good team right now for Tournament Week 5 while holding Sinner and Fils at 48 credits on my bench as alternates. Right now the best I could do is Sinner and Hadar to hold through Tournament Week 6 when they're not playing in Tournament Week 5. Which is fine, but Hadar might not be a lock for me in Roland Garros, whereas I know that I want Sinner no matter what, and unless Fils is in Sinner's section, then I want him as well. So by holding Sinner, it means you don't have to waste any free switches. You don't have to switch him out this week and waste some of your trading potential. And more importantly, you've only got 2 free switches for Tournament Week 6. You don't want to burn one of those just to bring back in Sinner because you know you want him and you already own him. If you look at option 2, when you sell and rebuy, let's say you want to sell Sinner for Shelton because he's a premium player who's playing, has got a good chance to get points, and then you bring him back in again for Roland Garros. This requires 2 switches minimum, 1 during your swing switch chip and then 1 to bring him back, one of your 2 free switches in Tournament Week 6. And it might even cost you both your free switches in Tournament Week 6 if you then spend the money elsewhere. If you do bring in Shelton and you think, oh, I've got 13 extra credits now, let me distribute that across my team, suddenly it's going to take you 2 switches to bring Sinner back. Then you're really going to be at disadvantage. So it concerns me because it's going to cost you at least 2 free switches to do this. And if we're treating switches as being worth 50 penalty points per switch, this means that you're banking on Shelton making 100 to 150 points in Hamburg. This means that he needs to make the semi-finals minimum for this move to be worth it. Obviously that's very plausible, but that's just to break even. You're then going to have to make sure that if you spread around the funds that the rest of the team also makes some points up. Otherwise, you're looking at a situation where you then have to obviously burn 1 or 2 free switches for tournament week 6 to reverse this. This then stops you making forward-thinking moves based on the draw for Roland Garros as well, where the points are much higher than an ATP 500 event. I think it just puts a lot of roadblocks in the way for a short-term gain. I'm not saying that you definitely do option 1 verbatim and you listen to me. I just want to get you thinking about it. I'm personally doing option 1, and I hope I've explained that clearly as to my rationale for this. Because as I say, when I start to think about the problems with option 2, there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of potential headaches along the way. And Roland Garros is so important in terms of the points on offer. I really want to be in a position where I've got 2 free switches to bring in the best players with the best draws and not having to worry about Jannik Sinner. And just to re-emphasise that, treat every switch as if it's worth a minus 50 point penalty. So when you're doing your trading, make sure that it's going to get you at least plus 2 credits net profit. And if you're doing your switches just with tournament week 5 in mind, make sure that they're going to pick up at least 50 points or more. So questions to ask yourself: do I believe that this player I want to bring in will outscore my current pick by plus 50 points this week? Now you might think, oh, this player's not playing in tournament week 5, so if I bring in someone who does, it's going to be a net positive. Might not be true. If you're bringing in someone for Geneva, for example, they need to make the quarterfinals at least for that to have been a good decision. And they need to make the last 16 in Hamburg. Again, they've got to win 2 matches for that to be a good decision, or 1 if they're a seed. So it's not a guarantee. It's not as simple as player not playing, bring in player who is playing, net positive result, because they are going to have to deliver on points. Especially if you're looking at doing more ambitious plays like Sinner to Shelton, where you then need even more points from him. And beyond that, you've got to think about long term as well. Do you believe that they'll outscore them in the next tournament as well? Will this player not only outscore them in tournament week 5, but also in tournament week 6? Because if you're taking out Feast, for example, and then you're bringing in Casper Ruud, because he's playing in Geneva, do you think that Ruud is going to earn more points in Geneva and Roland Garros combined compared to Feast at Roland Garros? It's honestly a close call. It might ring true, but it could easily go the other way because Ruud's only at Geneva ATP 250. Let's say he makes the semi-finals there and gets 100 points. That's an 100-point head start on Feast, but you already had to spend a switch to get him, so it's only plus 50 points in profit. And then who do you think at Roland Garros is going to go further, Feast or Ruud? My money would be on Feast right now. So then again, when you break that down, Feast will have earned more points over the course of those 2 weeks. This is the psychology to think about and the edge it will give you when you start to plan out your switches ahead of tournament week 5, because there are massive decisions ahead. It's not just going to impact how you do in Hamburg and Geneva, but it's going to have massive consequences for Roland Garros as well as the clay court swing draws to a conclusion. So that's it for this video. I hope it was very useful when it comes to thinking about how to play the swing switch chip and decisions you've got to make. Any questions or dilemmas or transfer plans you've got, please do let me know in the comments. Please like this video and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. It really helps and I appreciate it a lot. Make sure you join the conversation as well over on our subreddit, ATP Fantasy, and join the 100 plus players we've got in our league right now if you haven't done so already. The code is on the screen. This has been Josh from Expected Aces, your edge in ATP Fantasy. Thanks for watching and I'll speak to you again very soon. Bye for now.